I looked at an interesting scripture when Paul says that though we might have 10,000 teachers, yet we have not many fathers. And that scripture has always struck a resounding chord in my spirit, because some people can say we don't have many fathers, but on the contrary, I've had several fathers. I had a father on my birth certificate. I had a stepdad whose last name I take on today. I had a stepfather who was ironically one of my friends that my mother married after that, and then I have a current stepdad. So today when I go in for Father's Day, you can get 4 cards for one, and Hallmark usually gives you a freebie. But in all that, I found that the rock was always my granddad. My granddad seemed to be the one that filled that emptiness. My stepdad, whose name I took on, Shreve, was a truck driver, and as we know that truck drivers usually don't make too much money sitting at home, they're on the road. So in that downtime, my stepdad being gone, I could always go over to my grandfather's house. He was the guy that was always there. He was kind of like Mr. Whitaker on Adventures in Odyssey that Focus on the Family put out. He was always the wise man. He was always the guy that was there. And he was not only there, but other kids seemed to hang out over there too, because they realized that my grandfather possessed something that they lacked within their character. And it might have been the family dynamic, whatever, but my granddad was the one that I always tried to get my affirmation from, because I'd realized that in him, my masculinity was resident. And I knew that if I was going to draw masculinity from anywhere, it wasn't going to be from my dad. He was a beer-drinking truck driver, came home, slept, drank, went back out on the road. But Granddad was there. And I can remember an incident when I was 6 years old. My grandfather said, "Today, I'm going to give you a task." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And so he picked me up, he lifted me, and he stuck me inside a 55-gallon drum that the top had already been cut out, and he set me in it. He said, "It looks like a barrel, but today you're going to turn this into a burn barrel." And I said, "Well, what is a burn barrel?" He handed an electric drill to me. Now remember, my grandfather was a perfectionist. You did not mess with my granddad. It was his way or the highway. He says, "I want these holes every 2 inches, and you can drill them better from the inside out." And when he handed me that drill, it was almost like being handed a rite of passage, because I'd realized that he trusted me with a tool, a real electric drill. And I was in there for a couple hours drilling holes, and when I came out, he said, "You did a good job." And that was at 6, and I can remember that day like it was yesterday. And right after that, he handed me this tool. And he said, "You're old enough now to have your own tools. I can see I gave you a small task and you did it right." And yet I saw from that point on that when he would take me fishing and I caught my first fish, he was excited. He knew my future. He could see what was in me. And I didn't. I was too young, but my granddad would show me off, and he would boast of just the things I could do. And they weren't things I was trying to do. They were just tasks that he would give me, and all I had to do was follow through. But then when my grandfather left and moved up to Oregon, I went with him that year to help the whole family move them up there. I got saved. And there was an altar call one day at church. And I went forward and he said, "Michael, I always thought you were saved." And I said, "No, I just went to church." But when I came back home after that, it was like the gates of hell were unleashed on me to try to pull me back into this quagmire of what's my identity. My grandpa was gone. My dad was gone as a truck driver. I started to reach out, and I would hang out with all my friends with their dads, because I saw that that masculine journey couldn't be fulfilled within the confines of our house, because it was my mom. And yet she was kind of a tomboy. She was tough. And, she was a young woman. She had me, conceived me when she was 16 years of age out of wedlock. And I always knew that my mom was young. My friends always told me how pretty she was, but it was like living with a younger, I shouldn't say younger, like an older sibling rather than a mom. And I couldn't draw that masculinity from her. And if anything, it was almost a competition because she tried to be friends with my friends. As we got older into high school, my world began to fall apart. My mom and dad found out that they were no longer compatible. They went different directions, they separated. My mom married one of my friends a year and a half later. And it was in that time that everything I thought that was stable and solid in life had just got turned upside down. I walked into the room one day, my mom and my sister were getting high. And I started to wonder, why? Why have absolutes? Why have this lifestyle of godly living when it doesn't seem to work? Nobody wants to do what's right. My sister decided she couldn't handle it, so she got married to get out of the mess. My mom's married to one of my best friends now. And then it was time to sell the house that we grew up as kids. And, we've all heard that expression, people ask you, when did you move out? Well, I never moved out. My family moved out on me. I was left there at home till our house sold. Within a year after my family left, one day I broke and I'd realized, where was my childhood? I was catapulted into being an adult. And I looked in the corner of my workshop and there was a fishing pole my grandpa gave me. I took that pole, went fishing, and as I was sitting there weeping at 19 years young, I remembered the lessons he taught me and how important his role was as a father in my life. So even to this day, I take young people, we have an internship, we have a ministry called Ultimate Wilderness Adventures where we take the beauty that's hidden within creation and bring it out and reveal scriptures. And one of the greatest lessons is the things we can learn with a fishing pole. And that's where God has impressed deep within my spirit that out of the adversity of my youthfulness, what I thought then was insurmountable was really, it was a testing ground to see, was I going to become the dad, a father for the many that were fatherless.